After cooking dinner for 14 of my in-laws, my wife's brother came up behind me, smacked me on the back like I was his loyal pet, and said, "Every family needs a punchline. Appreciate you making the rest of us look good." My daughter almost spit out her drink from laughing and added, "Dad's basically a soggy paper towel." My wife leaned back in her chair with a smug little grin and chimed in, "Let's be real, he's more like a Roomba. Quiet, pre-programmed, and only comes in handy when there's a mess to clean." The whole table erupted in laughter. I smiled like I was in on the joke. Yesterday, though, that same wife and her mother showed up at my apartment door, crying their eyes out and begging me to talk. But to explain how we got to that doorstep moment, I have to rewind to last Saturday night, the night it finally hit me how long I'd been the family joke. 15 years, give or take. See, I've always been the one who cooks in our household. It's just kind of my thing. While everyone else zones out on their phones or hovers around the snack tray, I'm the guy sweating it out in the kitchen, whipping up multi-course meals that take days of prep. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I used to genuinely love it. Last weekend was my brother-in-law Derek's 45th birthday. I spent 3 full days prepping the meal: handmade pasta, a prime rib roast slow-cooked to perfection, the fancy kind that costs more than my entire streaming bill, and a molten chocolate lava cake that could have brought a food critic to tears. 14 people packed around our dining table, shoveling in mouthfuls of food I'd poured my energy into since Thursday. I was walking out with the final dish when Derek gave me a hard slap on the back, hard enough to splash some of the sauce over the side of the bowl. He turned to the group and grinned wide as he delivered his one-liner, "Every family needs a punchline. Thanks for making the rest of us look like winners." They all lost it. I mean, not just chuckles, real, full-on belly laughs. The kind that make people snort. My 16-year-old daughter Ava practically coughed up her soda before joining in. "Dad's like a wet paper towel," she said, and the laughter got even louder. But the dagger came next. Lena, my wife of 14 years, tilted back in her seat, gave this little smirk and said, "Honestly, he's more like a Roomba. Quiet, runs on routine, and only shows up when something's spilled." Everyone howled. My mother-in-law Marilyn was dabbing her eyes from laughing too hard. My nephew was slamming his fist on the table like it was the best stand-up act he'd ever seen. And there I was, still holding that sauce boat, frozen smile locked onto my face like it had been glued there. Here's the thing about being the family joke: after a while, you stop noticing it's even happening. You write it off as teasing, harmless family fun. It becomes part of the background hum of your life. I'd convinced myself it was just how they showed love. But that night, something changed. Maybe it was seeing my daughter jump in without hesitation. Maybe it was the way Lena didn't even glance at me to check if I was okay. Or maybe, after a decade and a half of this crap, I'd finally run out of grace. I powered through the rest of dinner with that same polite smile, thanked everyone for the compliments they tacked onto their digs, and even cleaned up after the meal while they all shifted to the living room to keep the party going. Later that night, while Lena snored beside me, I lay awake scrolling through old photos, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. All those nights I cooked for hours, sometimes days. Every photo had the same look on my face. That same dumb, eager-to-please grin. Like a golden retriever hoping for a head pat. I've never been the kind of guy who stirs the pot. Lena's always been the one to take charge during disagreements. But at 3 a.m. I decided I was finished playing the fool. Sunday morning I stuck to my usual routine. Got up early, brewed some coffee, waited for Lena to shuffle into the kitchen for her caffeine fix. I told her I was running to the store for a few things. She barely looked up from whatever was on her phone. Instead of going shopping, I drove straight to the bank. Took out exactly half of what was in our savings and checking, no more, no less. I wasn't trying to be vindictive. Just wanted to make a point. Then I drove to my sister Rachel's place on the other side of town. She's always been the only one who actually sees how Lena's family treats me. Last Christmas, she even called out Derek when he joked that I was domesticated. Everyone brushed it off as Rachel being too sensitive, but I remember the way she looked at me, part pity, part frustration. Like she wanted to shake me and say, "Why do you let them talk to you like that?" Back then, I didn't have an answer. Now I do. I explained everything to Rachel, and without hesitation, she offered up her guest room. I took it for the night anyway. By that afternoon, I'd found a month-to-month rental across town. It wasn't anything special, just a small one-bedroom with a kitchen I liked. I signed the lease online and paid the deposit, first month and last month, all from my brand new solo bank account. I didn't pack much. Just enough. The only thing I left behind was a note on the kitchen counter. "Find someone else to be your punchline." Then I shut off notifications on my phone. By that evening, I had 55 missed calls and texts. 23 from Lena, 14 from Ava, and the rest a mix of in-laws. I only replied to one Ava's. I love you, but I need a little space right now. We'll talk soon. Monday morning, I reached out to my buddy Ben. He'd been through a brutal divorce and knew the terrain. We met for breakfast and he gave me the basics, separation 99. Keep records. Don't waste joint funds. Don't drag your kid into it. Keep it clean. Simple stuff, but crucial. I told my boss I needed the week off for a family emergency, which technically wasn't a lie. I spent Monday setting up fresh accounts, updating auto pays for things like my gym membership and insurance, and canceling shared subscriptions. Netflix didn't make the cut. If Lena wants to binge true crime, she can set up her own account now. Tuesday is when Marilyn, my mother-in-law, started calling. I let the first 6 calls go to voicemail. The 7th I finally listened to. Ethan, please. This is insane. Whatever's going on, I'm sure we can fix it together as a family. Lena's falling apart. Ava doesn't understand why her dad just walked away. Please call me back. That's what the voicemail said. Call her back? After spending 14 years cooking, cleaning, and getting laughed at like it was my only purpose? That's a hell of a thing to ask. Instead of picking up the phone, I spent that night pulling together a document, something I probably should have started years ago. I gathered screenshots of text threads where Lena made me feel 2 inches tall. I added photos from birthdays and holidays where I'd prepped every detail only to be left out of the actual celebration. I even dug up notes from solo therapy sessions, ones I started going to just to figure out why I always felt like a stranger in my own house. By Wednesday morning, that document was ready. I emailed it out to Marilyn, Derek, and a few of the other regulars from Saturday night's comedy roast. Subject line, why I left, a 20-year overview. Not exactly subtle. For hours, the silence was deafening. Then my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Derek, dude, it was just a joke. You're being way too sensitive. Marilyn, I had no idea you felt this way. We need to talk in person. Lena, I can't believe you'd air our private business to my family. This is humiliating. Notice anything missing there? Yeah, still no apology. By Thursday, it seemed like Lena finally realized I wasn't coming back home with my head down and my suitcase in hand. Her messages started to shift. Suddenly, it was all, I miss you so much. I never realized how much you actually do around here. Ava and I had cereal for dinner because we have no idea how to cook anything real. It was too late for that. Still, I won't lie, there was a small, petty part of me that felt a twisted kind of satisfaction. The house chef had clocked out and now they were floundering without their kitchen robot. Friday morning, I met with Ben again. This time, we talked about taking the next steps, nothing binding yet, just the start of a formal separation. A draft. A framework that showed I wasn't bluffing. Ben drew up the paperwork and let's just say it wasn't exactly generous toward Lena. Not vindictive, just honest. It reflected who had actually held our household together all these years. That night, Lena left me a voicemail crying about how her grocery store card got declined. She was stunned, like it never even occurred to her that I'd been paying that bill the whole time. Welcome to the real world, sweetheart. By Saturday, exactly a week after the dinner, I felt better than I had in ages. It's wild how standing up for yourself can feel like coming up for air after years underwater. Rachel stopped by my apartment and I made her dinner. Nothing extravagant, just a simple carbonara with a salad on the side. As we sat down, she lifted her glass and said to my brother, who finally realized he's worth more than their bullshit. I nearly broke down right then and there, face first into my pasta. Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. And there they were, Lena and Marilyn. Mascara smeared, red-eyed, barely holding it together. They were practically tripping over each other to talk. Turns out, a week without their trusty household Roomba made them rethink some things. But trust me, that was just the beginning. Update 1. First off, wow. I never expected my story to blow up the way it did. My inbox? A crime scene. Thank you for all the kind words, support, and, digital awards. Some of y'all are ready to go full gladiator for me, and while I seriously appreciate the backup, let's keep the pitchforks metaphorical, yeah? And for those asking, yes, this is very real. I honestly wish it wasn't. I'm not creative enough to make this stuff up. So, back to the story. When we left off, Lena and Marilyn had shown up at my door looking like they just watched the finale of some gut-wrenching drama. I hadn't exactly planned for this moment. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut and go back to my coffee. But even after everything, I'm still me. I'm not a doormat anymore, but I haven't turned into a heartless bastard either. So, I let them in. My apartment isn't anything special. Just a one-bedroom with appliances so old they probably remember dial-up internet. Marilyn walked in like she just stepped into a condemned warehouse. Lena kept dabbing her eyes with the sad little tissue that gave up trying about 20 minutes earlier. I offered them water because I wasn't raised by wolves and honestly, that's all I had. My fridge inventory? 3 eggs, a half stick of butter, a chunk of cheese, and a 6-pack. Bachelor mode activated. Well, technically separated guy mode. Marilyn started in first. We've been so worried about you. Translation, your absence is really inconvenient for us. I didn't say anything. Just nodded and let the silence hang. One benefit of being the quiet one in a family of talkers? You get really good at weaponizing silence. Took about 40 seconds before Lena cracked. She launched into a teary monologue about how she never meant to hurt me. How the jokes were just their quirky family dynamic. How she didn't realize I took them so seriously. Classic gaslighting. Textbook stuff. I'd heard versions of that script so many times I could have delivered the lines myself. When she finally finished, I looked at her and asked one question. If Derek said those things about you, would you have laughed? She froze like I'd just asked her to solve a math problem while walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. Her expression said it all. Marilyn jumped in to do her usual reality-bending act. She rambled about family dynamics and how maybe I was just being overly sensitive and maybe I misunderstood the tone of everything. Sure, Marilyn. Because if you rewrite the script, you never have to face your own lines. So I pulled out my phone. And I played the recording. Yep, I recorded it. Not the whole night, just the part where Derek said I was basically a household appliance and everyone laughed like it was a comedy special. I'd hit record right after his joke. I don't even know why. Maybe a part of me just knew I'd need proof when the story got rewritten later. Hearing their own words played back, hearing the laughter, the tone, it hit different. Lena's face went from defensive to stunned and eventually to something that looked a lot like shame. Marilyn just stared at the carpet like it might rescue her if she stared hard enough. When the clip ended, I told them I'd been collecting moments like that for years. Not out of spite, but out of survival. When you're constantly dismissed, you start keeping receipts. Screenshots of texts, emails, even handwritten birthday cards with backhanded compliments wrapped in glitter and sarcasm. My personal favorite? Happy birthday to the man who proves that even great cooking can't replace ambition. Touching, right? That's when Lena dropped her first bombshell. Turns out Derek had been camping out at their house every single night that week, running his mouth. According to Lena, he kept telling her I was just going through a midlife meltdown and that I'd come crawling back as soon as I remembered how good I had it. Worse, he'd been whispering in Ava's ear too, feeding her the idea that dads sometimes need to throw little tantrums to feel important. Nice, right? And then came bombshell number 2, Derek was drowning financially. Not just a little debt here and there, we're talking full-blown foreclosure territory. Mr. Big Shot had apparently made some reckless investments and was now leveraged to the point where losing his house was a very real possibility. His wife had no clue. Lena only found out because he came to her asking for a sizable loan just 2 days prior. Now, I'd love to say I felt some deep, brotherly concern for him, but honestly, my sympathy for Derek barely filled a shot glass. I looked Lena in the eye and asked point blank, "Why are you here? Are you actually sorry, or do you just want me to come back so you can hit the reset button and keep treating me like the families live in joke and unpaid cook?" She started crying again, but this time it felt different. Not the usual crocodile tears that popped out when she didn't get her way. These felt raw, like they came from somewhere real. She admitted, for the first time, that she'd never actually thought about how her words landed. She said she just assumed I was fine because I never pushed back. That seeing that massive document I sent around had been like looking at herself through a stranger's lens, and she hated what she saw. Marilyn had been mostly quiet until then, just nodding along slowly. But then she dropped something that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "I watched my daughter treat you the same way my husband treated me for 50 years, and I never stepped in. I just assumed that's how marriage works. And for a moment, I didn't know what to say. Now, I'd love to wrap this up in a neat little bow and tell you we hugged it out and had some magical reconciliation moment. But real life doesn't work like that." I told them both, calmly, that I wasn't coming back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. If there was even a chance of fixing this, it wouldn't be through apologies alone. It would take counseling. Not just for Lena and me, but for the whole family. Ava included. They left looking like they'd just been slapped by a realization they didn't expect to feel. Shell-shocked, but maybe finally starting to get it. That was Sunday. Monday rolled around, and I was in the office kitchen reheating a pathetic microwave lunch when guess who showed up like a bad penny? Derek. No idea how he even got into the building. He pulled the whole man-to-man shtick, saying families go through rough patches and that real men don't walk out when things get hard. Which was rich, coming from someone who couldn't even be honest with his own wife about the financial cliff he'd led them to. I let him finish his little speech. Then I asked, "How's that investment portfolio treating you these days?" His face drained of color so fast I thought he might actually faint. He started mumbling about how that was a private matter. I just smiled and said, "Sure, and I'd be more than happy to chat about my marriage. Right after you explain to your clients why you've been moving their money into risky investments without telling them." Now, I didn't actually know for sure if he had, but based on how fast he shut up and walked out, I was close enough to the mark. Later, I heard he ran straight to Marilyn, whining that I'd threatened him. I hadn't. I just spoke the truth. Facts aren't threats. Tuesday, something unexpected happened. I got a text from Ava, and for once it wasn't dripping with teenage attitude or cold distance. She asked if we could meet for coffee that weekend. She didn't make any promises, just said she'd been thinking about a few things. I took that as progress. Wednesday, reality finally smacked Lena in the face. She called again and I let it go to voicemail. Apparently, she'd been declined at the grocery store for the second time because the credit card didn't go through. She never realized I'd been quietly covering the bills all these years. Welcome to adult life, sweetheart. Thursday, Ben came by with the formal separation paperwork. They weren't harsh. I wasn't trying to leave her in the dust. They were just fair, honest. It was a 50-50 asset split, but with specific recognition of everything I'd contributed beyond the money. The meal planning, the housework, the emotional glue that kept the family running. Managing Ava's school calendar. Staying in touch with relatives. Making sure holidays didn't turn into disasters. Ben advised me to hold off on sending the papers just yet. "Let her sit with the silence a little longer," he said. "Like a good steak. Sometimes you need to let it rest before cutting into it." That Friday night, Ava had a lacrosse game. I'd never missed one. Not once. It felt weird not being there. Not standing on the sidelines awkwardly cheering while she pretended she didn't see me. Instead, I had her favorite snacks delivered to her with a little handwritten note. "Proud of you. Always. Love, Dad." Ben went. His daughter plays on the same team and gave me the play-by-play. Said Ava scored twice. And didn't celebrate with Lena, Marilyn, or Derek afterward. Small win, but a win nonetheless. The weekend brought something else I never expected. Derek's wife called me. We'd never been close. She always seemed to buy into the idea that I was just the family buffoon. But she sounded shaken. Turns out, my little jab in the break room had set off alarm bells. She'd started snooping. Found hidden bank statements tucked in Derek's home office drawers. Turns out they were this close to losing everything. And she had no clue. None. I felt for her. Unlike me, she genuinely hadn't known what was going on behind the curtain. I told her gently that she should probably speak to a financial advisor, and maybe even a lawyer, not to be cruel, just to protect herself. By the time Sunday came around, 2 full weeks since that infamous dinner, something had shifted in the air. Lena stopped trying to guilt me into coming back and started asking how she could help make things right. Marilyn sent me an email. Yes, an actual email, not a lazy 2-line text. A real apology, thoughtfully written. She acknowledged her part in all of it and you could tell she'd actually been reflecting. Derek's wife even sent a message thanking me. She froze their joint accounts just in time, right before Derek could drain them. But the biggest surprise came that Sunday afternoon. Ava showed up at my apartment. No big dramatic entrance. Just a quiet text from downstairs. "I'm here. Can we talk?" When I opened the door, she looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Gone was the smug teenager who laughed when I got compared to a Roomba. Standing there was the same girl who used to curl up on my chest during nature documentaries and fall asleep halfway through the elephant migration. The conversation that followed wasn't smooth. There were tears, mostly hers, though I had a few. There were some tough words. Honest ones. Fair ones. But somewhere in that messy, teary exchange, I finally heard the words I didn't realize I'd been aching to hear for so long. "I'm sorry, Dad." She told me something that both shattered my heart and gave me a flicker of hope. She said she treated me the way everyone else did, like I didn't matter. Like I was disposable. Just there. She confessed she'd started seeing the school counselor. Not just about school stress, but about how she treats people, especially me. And then, voice barely above a whisper, she asked me the question I'd been bracing for and dreading. Do you think you'll ever come home, Dad? I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her the truth. I don't know. I really don't. But what I do know, I'll never again be the family's doormat. Before she left, she paused in the doorway, glanced back, and said, Mom's moving in with Grandma Marilyn tomorrow. She can't afford the house without you. Just thought you should know. And that brings us to yesterday, Monday. Exactly 3 weeks since everything flipped upside down. I'd just gotten home from work, keys still in my hand, when my phone buzzed with a message from Lena. We need to talk. For real this time. No crying, no excuses. Just talk. I agreed, but on my terms. We met at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. What she told me there. It shifted things all over again. But that's a story for part 3, and I'm already pushing the word count. Also, my frozen dinner is starting to smell like burnt sadness. So for now, thanks for listening, Reddit. Sometimes the family punchline gets to deliver the final joke. Final update. First off, huge thanks to everyone who commented, messaged, and awarded the post. I didn't expect my life story to become Reddit's emotional soap opera, but here we are. Some of you suggested revenge plans so elaborate I'm slightly scared of you. Seek help. Seriously. Actually, I probably need some too. Anyway, back to the update. Last time, I was getting ready to meet Lena at a coffee shop after she said she wanted to talk for real. I picked a spot downtown that's known for making cinnamon rolls roughly the size of a steering wheel. Not because I was trying to treat her, frankly, I wasn't sure how this would go, but because if things went sideways, I could drown my feelings in sugar. Emotional eating, undefeated since middle school. I showed up 25 minutes early. That's just how I'm wired. Ordered my usual black coffee so strong it could strip paint and grabbed a corner seat with a clear view of the door. Lena came in 5 minutes late. Classic. But right away, something felt different. For starters, she wasn't wearing any makeup, which I'd seen maybe 3 times in our entire marriage. She had a manila folder with her, thick enough to kill a small rodent. And most surprising of all? She looked nervous. Lena doesn't do nervous. She does polished, snappy, and passionately opinionated. But this was new. She didn't even order anything, which for her is unheard of. Usually she can't function without a fancy cappuccino and a gluten-free muffin. She sat down, placed the folder on the table, took a breath, and hit me with 6 words I never thought I'd hear come out of her mouth. I think I need help, Ethan. Not we need to talk. Not the family misses you. Not even I'm sorry. Just her. Admitting something real. Inside the folder? A list of therapists in the area who specialize in family work. She'd already booked her first appointment. Just for herself. Not for us as a couple. Not for the whole family. Just her. She said she'd been spending the past week really thinking. About us. About our marriage. About what kind of example she'd been setting for Ava. And then she said something that hit me like a freight train. She told me that deep down she'd always resented how content I was. How at peace I seemed with my life, while she constantly felt like she had to chase more money, more status, more control. My happiness with the simple stuff made her feel small. So she started tearing me down to feel bigger. She made it clear this wasn't an excuse. Just a realization. One that had come to her while lying wide awake on Marilyn's lumpy pull-out couch that smelled faintly like mothballs and disappointment. I asked, why now? After 14 years of treating me like I didn't matter, why the sudden change? She looked down, then said, because you finally stood up for yourself, and it scared the hell out of me. She never actually believed I'd leave. In her mind, I was the constant. The reliable one. The one who'd always be there no matter how she treated me. But I wasn't there now. And that shook her to her core. We talked for 2 full hours. The cinnamon roll didn't even survive the first 20 minutes. Lena said she wanted to work on things on herself first and on us if I was willing. But she also said she understood if I wasn't. I told her she was off to a good start. That individual therapy was smart. But I wasn't moving back in. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to see change. Not promises, proof. She nodded and gently pushed the folder toward me. Tucked inside, along with the therapist printouts, was a copy of the separation agreement Ben had drawn up. She'd signed it. Every page. At the bottom of the last one, she'd written in pen. I hope we never need this, but I understand why you do. That was Monday. Tuesday brought a twist I didn't see coming. Text from Derek. Need to talk. My office. 2 p.m. My first thought? Hard pass. But curiosity won. I told him no dice on the office meeting, we'd meet at the coffee shop near my work. I wasn't giving him home field advantage. Derek showed up looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. The Rolex was gone. The designer polo replaced with a wrinkled button-down and a coffee stain on the cuff. He got right to it. His financial house of cards? Collapsing. 3 clients had pulled their portfolios after rumors started swirling about his sketchy investment habits. For the record, I never told anyone anything. But people talk, especially when money's involved. His wife froze their accounts. She's staying with her sister. And the cherry on top? Marilyn, yes, Marilyn refused to bail him out. Her reason? It's time you face the consequences for once in your life. I nearly spit out my coffee. Derek didn't offer a full-blown apology for years of treating me like garbage. That would have been too much to hope for. But he did admit something that floored me. He said he'd always been jealous of my relationship with Lena. Not in a creepy way, but because it had seemed solid, real. While his marriage had been all about optics, surface-level stability, and chasing appearances. Then came the kicker. He asked if I talked to his wife. Put in a good word. Tell her he was trying to change. The irony was richer than that cinnamon roll I stress-ate the day before. I was the joke of the family, remember? Now I'm their emotional translator. I looked him in the eye and said I'd consider it, but only under 2 conditions. First, he had to publicly apologize for that family punchline line at the dinner. Second, he had to be straight with his wife. Full transparency about everything he'd done financially. He agreed. So fast it almost made me pity him. Almost. On Wednesday, Ava texted and asked if she could come by after school. By now, she'd become a regular visitor at my sad little bachelor pad, usually showing up with college applications or homework she wanted me to look over. But this time she brought something different. A pamphlet from the school counselor's office. She told me she'd been talking to the guidance counselor about her behavior toward me. Said she wanted my honest perspective on some of the things they'd discussed. What followed was one of the most honest, emotionally raw conversations I've ever had with anyone. We talked about family roles, about respect, about how kids absorb what they see, how she'd grown up watching other people treat me like a background character, and how my silence had unintentionally told her that was okay. Then she looked up at me, her eyes already glassy, and asked, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" That hit me like a punch to the chest. I told her the truth, no. You're one of the best people I know. You're just young and still learning. Making mistakes doesn't make you bad. Not learning from them, that's a different story. Before she left, she told me Lena had been different lately. More quiet. More thoughtful. Said she'd walked in the night before and found her mom crying while looking through old family pictures. I didn't know how to feel, but it felt like something. Maybe progress. Thursday rolled around, Thanksgiving. Yeah, that Thanksgiving. The one I'd usually spend 3 days preparing for while everyone else kicked back on the couch complaining about how long the food was taking. I hadn't even remembered it was this week until Marilyn called late Wednesday night. She asked, "So, what are our plans tomorrow?" Like there was still an hour. I told her plainly I didn't have plans. Figured they'd do Thanksgiving without me this year. There was this long pause on the other end. Then she said something that made me lower my fork mid-bite of a sad microwave dinner. "What if we cooked for you this year?" I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. The thought of Marilyn, Lena, and Ava pulling off Thanksgiving dinner was like imagining 3 cats trying to assemble IKEA furniture. Technically possible, but doomed from the start. But she was serious. She said they'd been watching YouTube tutorials, practicing mashed potatoes, apparently chunky but edible, even testing recipes. I agreed, but with one non-negotiable: we'd do it at my apartment. Neutral ground. Thursday morning, they showed up with grocery bags overflowing with the strangest collection of ingredients I've ever seen. Lena had printed out detailed recipes with color-coded instructions. Ava had installed some cooking app that actually scolded her when she did something wrong. Her words, not mine. I sat at my tiny kitchen table nursing a mug of coffee, watching the chaos unfold. Marilyn kept forgetting I'd only lived there 3 weeks and didn't have half the stuff she asked for. Lena nearly set off the smoke detector twice. Ava wielded a knife with impressive and slightly alarming precision. I kept my mouth shut unless they asked for help. Which honestly, they did a lot. By around 3 p.m., they'd somehow produced something that resembled Thanksgiving dinner. The turkey? A bit dry on the outside, still pink near the bone. The stuffing? Sweet as dessert, Ava apparently read tablespoon as teacup. Not kidding. Green bean casserole was the standout hit, hard to mess up: canned soup and fried onions. But none of that really mattered. Because they tried. Really, really tried. We sat down to eat and Marilyn raised her glass. Ethan, she said, I want to apologize. For all the years I stood by and watched how they treated you. For the way I raised my daughter to believe that belittling her partner was normal. And for never fully appreciating what you've done for this family. Then Lena cleared her throat. Her voice was unsteady. I'm sorry, she said. For taking you for granted. For turning you into the punchline. For teaching our daughter that that kind of treatment is okay. I'm working on being better. And I hope someday you'll forgive me. Ava, never one to do things halfway, had typed out her apology on her notes app. Dad, she read, I'm sorry for laughing when Uncle Derek called you the family joke. You're not a paper towel. You're not a Roomba. You're the guy who checks my essays and makes me lunch and remembers which cold meds knock me out. You're my dad. And I was a jerk. And I'm really, really sorry. I didn't even try to hold back the tears. Not that I could have if I wanted to. But before I could say a word, the doorbell rang. It was Derek. Wearing a plain, slightly wrinkled sweater, looking like someone had squeezed all the arrogance out of him. Beside him? His wife, who I didn't expect to see. She gave me a small, cautious smile. I invited them in. The apartment was already full with 4 people, but we made space. Derek looked around at the sad little turkey, the mashed potato lumps, the sugary stuffing, and then at me. He took a breath and said, Ethan. I'm sorry. For the dinner comment. For the years of disrespect. For trying to turn your family against you when you finally stood up for yourself. I was wrong. And I'm trying to do better. His wife gently squeezed his hand. Later, she told me he'd come clean about everything. About the money. About how he treated me. They were in counseling now, both marital and financial. Downsized the house. Budgeted everything. He was rebuilding. But this time, as partners. We ate that imperfect Thanksgiving dinner together. The conversation wobbled between awkward and surprisingly sincere. Derek asked me about cooking techniques, not mockingly but genuinely curious. Marilyn complimented the apartment. Lena did the dishes without being asked. Small things. Ordinary things. But they felt huge. When everyone else left, Lena lingered in the doorway. She looked at me and asked, does this change anything? I was honest. I don't know yet. I see the effort. I really do. But trust doesn't come back overnight. It takes time. She nodded, biting her lip a little. Then she asked something that caught me off guard. Would you help us with Christmas dinner? Not cook it for us, just teach us how. I said yes before my brain could even catch up to my mouth. That was a month ago. Since then, we've had 4 couples counseling sessions. Some were awkward. Some felt like therapy mixed with emotional landmines. But they were honest. Ava and I have had dinner together twice a week, sometimes at my place, sometimes out. Derek and his wife are rebuilding slowly. He hasn't cracked a single joke at my expense since that Thanksgiving meal. And just last weekend, I went back to the house to pick up more of my things. The house felt different. Not wildly, not dramatically. Just enough to make me pause in the doorway. Lena had rearranged the living room, subtle changes, but meaningful. A couple of the louder, impersonal art pieces were gone, replaced with framed photos I'd taken on our old trips. The kitchen? Cleaner than I'd left it. Way cleaner, actually. On the fridge, there was a handwritten meal plan. Ava's handwriting. Neat block letters, little doodles in the margins. Next to each meal were YouTube links for recipes, proof that they were still learning. Still trying. Lena asked if I wanted to stay for dinner. Said she'd made lasagna using my recipe. It wasn't restaurant-worthy. The noodles were a little chewy, the sauce had too much water, but you know what? She tried. Really tried. So I stayed. We ate. We talked. Not small talk or surface-level stuff. Real conversation. About where we'd gone wrong. What we wanted now. What a healthy relationship might actually look like if we were brave enough to build one. When dinner ended and I grabbed my coat, Lena walked me to the door. Then, softly, she asked, would you consider coming home after New Year's? Not to resume my old role. Not as the invisible chef or emotional sponge. But as her husband. As Ava's father. As a partner, equal, seen, respected. I told her the truth. I'll think about it. And I am. Yesterday was Christmas. I spent the morning over at Rachel's place. Her kids opened presents while she made French toast and threatened anyone who tried to help. It was warm, loud, chaotic in the best way. That evening, I went to Marilyn's house for dinner. A dinner they had cooked with barely any help from me. Derek and his wife were there too. Still quieter than they used to be, but in a good way. Happier, maybe? Grounded. Like they'd finally figured out there's more to life than being loud and right. After we finished eating, Derek stood up and raised his glass. To Ethan, he said, who had the courage to walk away and the grace to let us earn a second chance. Everyone raised their glasses. No jokes. No digs. Just clinks and quiet nods. They looked at me and I saw it. Not pity. Not awkward guilt. Respect. I'm not sure what comes next. I don't know if I'll move back in or keep this new space I've carved out for myself. Don't know if Lena and I will fully rebuild what we had or decide we're better as co-parents than as spouses. Don't know if Derek will stay grounded or drift back into old patterns. But here's what I do know. I'm not the family punchline anymore. And honestly, that's the best revenge I could have ever asked for. Better than any speech. Better than a dramatic exit. Just peace. And finally, my dignity back. That's the win.